It's playoff time. Let's go. AC Podcast back. We reloaded. Man, I'm excited to do this because I got a lot to get into. These playoff games that transpired over the weekend. I know my fans have been waiting to hear from me about this stuff. Plus some other stuff I have to get to as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers are concerned. But I'm going to save them for last. I don't want to bore any of you fans who are fans of other teams with the lengthy diatribe that I'm got to get into with this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they're last on the docket today, and they played the last playoff game anyway, so it works out perfectly. That can just go in order. But we're gonna get into that because that was an absolute atrocity what happened to them, and a changing of the guard, and a humbling experience. But you already know where we're starting. We got the Colts and the Bills, the Rams and the Seahawks, the Bucks and the Washington football team. Then we're going to get to the Titans and the Ravens game, the Saints and the Bears. And then we're going to get to these Pittsburgh Steelers and that atrocity that they put forth on display on Sunday Night Football for the whole national world to watch. But let's just start with this. Buffalo Bills knock out the Indianapolis Colts 27-24. Colts had a good season. Phil Rivers had a good career, but it's over. He needs to retire. Not saying he's trash or anything. Had a relatively exceptional day. 309 yards on 27 of 46 throwing, a 92 QBR, 163 rushing yards for the Indianapolis Colts. But here's my problem. When it came time to make the key throws, Phillip Rivers just couldn't make them. And this has been the story with Phillip Rivers time and time again throughout his entire career. He didn't turn the ball over like I expected him to, but I expected the Buffalo Bills to win this game. And Phillip Rivers just didn't make the necessary throws, and Frank Reich, people say he was too aggressive. I like the decisions that he made. He was trying to go for the throat. You don't try to play to lose in the playoffs. You play to win because it's win or go home regardless. There are no ties. There's no any of those type of shenanigans. So you might as well play to win and put your team in the best possible position to win and rely on your offense, which is, or at least your offensive line, which is the strength of this team. Now, when we're talking about this game, relatively effective running the ball, like I said, Jonathan Taylor, this guy, he's just going to be a stud. Let's just give this brother his praise and adulation. He was the best rookie running back this year by far, not even close. Forget the other dude, Robinson from Jacksonville. He doesn't have the talent that Jonathan Taylor has. You look at the way this guy can just break tackles, his speed, his elusiveness, his ability to turn something into something out of nothing. And you look at the offensive line he's running behind with, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, and these boys. It's just something to behold. But ultimately, it didn't matter because the Buffalo Bills outscored them. And this is exactly why I said the Buffalo Bills were the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because this guy, Josh Allen, he can just make some absurdly arrogant throws with his arm talent. There's only throws that him and Patrick Mahomes can make and no one else, because they have the two strongest arms in the league. Him and Patrick Mahomes, they have the two strongest arms. And the way that Josh Allen's improved his accuracy, it's something to behold. I don't know what he did. I read an article about it, but the leaps and bounds that he's made as a passer and the accuracy, it's just tremendous. It just speaks volumes to the development of him as a passer. And you got to give Brian Dable a lot of credit as the offensive coordinator because he's kept faith in Josh Allen and he has called an offense that fits his skill set. You talk about Stephon Diggs. This guy, he's just unstoppable. Led the league in receiving yards, led the league in receptions, and he picked up right where he left off in the postseason. 6 receptions for 128 yards, 21.3 yards per catch. My goodness. Just something special. And then Gabriel Davis, this guy's a fourth round pick out of UCF. Go Knights. My girlfriend's an alumni. That's the only reason I'm saying that. But You talk about him and he could take the top off the coverage. Additionally, with Stephon Diggs, who can attack you at all three levels of the field. You talk about Cole Beasley, 7 receptions for 57 yards, can attack you short. And then you talk about the running game. It's not stellar, but Josh Allen, he can run the football effectively. You saw he had a bunch of QB draws, a bunch of QB powers in this game. So they were keeping the Colts defense honest and, trying to minimize their rushing attack because, the Bills are one of the teams that, throw the ball most on first down. So to minimize the Colts pass rush to some degree, they had to keep them honest and to keep them in their rush lanes by keeping Josh Allen as an option as a runner. So that was impressive. But Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, they left a lot to be desired. They were okay. They were average. But Josh Allen led this team in rushing, 11 rushes for 54 yards. And when you look at the Colts, just a lot of zone coverage, just a lot of off coverage, you got to get in the face of these Bills receivers, and they just didn't want to do it. They're primarily a cover 2 team. They led the league in cover 2 coverage this past season, and, they had an elite defense because of it. Bend, don't break. Let the front 4 get home. Use Darius Leonard as that guy in the middle of the field, and, let these linebackers eat and protect this secondary. And, their secondary is admirable. They're no scrubs. But against Stephon Diggs, you got to have a number 1 corner. And whether it's Xavier Rhodes, whether it's Rocky Ya-Sin, Kenny Moore, none of these dudes, none of them can guard Stephon Diggs. And that's just what it boils down to. You saw Julian Blackmon get a little flat-footed on one of the deep touchdowns to Stephon Diggs, I believe. And so you had that going for you, a busted coverage there. So you just had it all going for you. And really what it boiled down to was this game just came down to who was the better quarterback and, who had the better defense. That's really what it came down to. And that's what it's about in the playoffs. Sure, we speak about these running games and whatnot, but this is a quarterback-driven league. And the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, they're hot. They're red hot, and I don't know if any team can slow them down. I'm hoping we get to see a Kansas City-Buffalo matchup, but we'll see. Right now, Buffalo's drawing the matchup of Baltimore, so we're going to see how that goes. But it's going to be interesting to see how these games shake out. Getting to this Rams-Seahawks game, I am thoroughly disappointed in Russell Wilson, the performance that he put on display. You talk about a 17.6 QBR, got sacked 5 times. Aaron Donald was out most of the third quarter and all the fourth quarter. 11-27 for 174 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick 6 on a screen pass. You're trying to target DK Metcalf because he was frustrated the whole first quarter, and Darius Williams picks him off. You just talk about this Rams defense. They're ferocious. They're fast. They're physical. They get after you. And they have the best corner in the league, and they have the best interior defensive lineman in the league. There's no debate about those two things. There's just no debate. You see what Jalen Ramsey can do. This guy, he's just on another level. You see why the Rams gave up 2 first-round picks to get this guy. He's just something special. What else can we say? Jalen Ramsey. From my alma mater, Florida State. I have a picture with this guy. This is a special man. He's just special. I'm sorry. I got to give this man his adulation and praise. It's just unbelievable. But when you talk about the Seattle Seahawks, I don't want to hear Russell Wilson. I don't want to hear anyone say that Russell Wilson is better than Patrick Mahomes ever again. I don't want to hear that sentence uttered. And I don't want to hear the excuses either. Russell Wilson has a good running game with Chris Carson. This running game ran for 136 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. So I don't get what their offensive coordinator, Pete Carroll's talking about we need to run the ball more next year. What are you talking about? You ran it effectively. What are you talking about? But that's a story for another day. We need not get into that. This was all about Russell Wilson to me because he just didn't deliver. You're talking about the last few postseasons for Russell Wilson. Got lucky Carson Wentz got cheap shot at last year, and you barely won that game 17-9. Then you got beat by Aaron Rodgers. You got the year before you got beat by Dak Prescott in the first round. And then the year before that, you didn't make the playoffs. And then this year you lose to a 4-finger Jared Goff who's playing with a broken thumb. Come on now, give me a break. And your defense played relatively stellar. I get they gave up 30, so you can't make the argument, but they kept the Rams out of the end zone for a majority of this game until later in the game. So I don't want to hear the excuses for Russell Wilson. I really don't. I'm sorry. But when you look at this, Russell Wilson's just got to be better. Missed too many throws, threw a crucial pick six, trying to force feed DK Metcalf. I'm just thoroughly disappointed. But when you look at this from the Rams' perspective, because Jared Goff only completed 9 passes, 9 for 19. And he's a true warrior. I give him a lot of credit. I thought Jared Goff was going to start this game. Thank goodness he did, because I don't know if John Wolford could have won this game. That's for certain. I don't believe that for a second. The Rams would have been going home if they had that dude still in the game. But Jared Goff, he was a warrior. He deserves a lot of respect. People bag on Jared Goff a lot. I like him as a quarterback. Some others don't. I understand why. But I like Jared Goff. In this game, he showed me he has a lot of toughness. Went out there with a broken thumb, 4 fingers, threw the ball, got this team into the end zone, got them 30 points. I mean, what else can you say? And then you talk about this man, another Florida State alma mater, another guy from my alma mater, Florida State, rather, Cam Akers, and what he did rushing the football, 4.7 yards per carry, 28 carries for 131 yards, and then you add in another 2 receptions for 45 yards. Cam Akers, he's just a stud. He's gonna be a stud. As a rookie, he's the lead back now. You talk about that. You talk about what Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods can do. Hopefully with, Jared Goff getting a little more comfortable from the thumb surgery. The Rams are a dangerous team. They're a dangerous team. It's going to be something special to watch this Rams defense go up against Aaron Rodgers. Because you already know what I want to see. Jalen Ramsey versus Devontae Adams. And the Packers O-line, which had about 3 Pro Bowlers on it, I believe, against Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd up front and Michael Brockers. You know what's going to decide this game. The secondary of the Rams versus the passing attack of Aaron Rodgers. The safeties, they're going to have to be disciplined this game, guarding this guy, Robert Tonyan, who is inexcusable that he didn't make the Pro Bowl in the NFC. That's just a flat-out disgrace by whoever was voting for the Pro Bowl. But that's a story for another day as well. And Jalen Ramsey versus Devontae Adams. That's what's going to decide this matchup. I believe it, and we're going to see where that takes us. But we got to keep trucking along. This was a weird game to me. The Bucs versus the Washington football team. I feel like the Bucs should have blown this team out, especially when you talk about the 3rd string quarterback Taylor Heineke was in there. I mean, give me a break. Heineke, he played admirably, but you knew he was no match for this Bucs team. You talk about the defensive line of the Washington football team. They ramped up the pressure a little bit in the second half, but they didn't get to Brady nearly enough to fluster him. I mean, Brady, it looked, he just dropped a casual 31 on this defense that, other than the front four, has nothing as far as linebackers or secondary play. I mean, what are we talking about? Cameron Curls and Ronald Darby's and these dudes in the back 7. It's just in, John Bostic's. And let's just stop with this. Let's just stop. There was no chance that Washington was going to win this game to me. To me, the Saints and the Bucs had the 2 easiest matchups in the wild card. It was just that simple to me. And the Bucs ran all over them. Average 5 yards a carry, got 142 yards. And then Mike Evans just schooled whoever was on him. Antonio Brown adds in a few things here and there. Cameron Brate just eating over the middle on their linebackers. And then Chris Godwin, if he didn't drop a couple balls, he would have had 100 yards receiving. And you probably would have dropped 40 on this defense. So there's that. There's not really much to discuss. We all want to see the matchup between the Bucs and the Saints. Hopefully they make it interesting this time instead of getting blown out 38-3. But we'll see, because the Bucs, other than the Packers, haven't beat any winning teams. So there's that. And obviously you get Devin White back as well. So that's going to be big for your defense. So we're going to see where that takes us. Getting to the Sunday slate of games, the game that was most interesting, or at least had the most, storylines, was this Ravens game, obviously. Matched up with the Titans. You saw how it ended last time with Derrick Henry running in for a touchdown in overtime. The 2 head coaches, obviously, there's no love lost between these 2 teams. Obviously, also as well, Baltimore lost to Tennessee last year in the wild card round after being the number 1 seed, 14-2, Lamar Jackson MVP, the whole 9. And for a lot of this game, it looked like Tennessee was, going to run away with it, up 10-0. The Ravens, especially Lamar Jackson, they don't come back from double-digit leads because they're not built that way. And we know this. These are 2 teams that are built to run the football and play with leads. And I felt like the team that had the more dominant rushing attack. Honestly, it boiled down to this for me as far as this game was concerned. The team that had more rushing yards was going to win the game. I don't care if Ryan Tannehill threw for 300. I don't care if Lamar Jackson threw for 300. The team that ran the ball more effectively was going to win this game. So whether that was Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins or whether that was Derrick Henry. And we saw it. The Titans have no backup plan if Derrick Henry is not leading the way. And that was my concern about the Titans all season long. Yes, they look good when Derrick Henry is running the ball. Their offense is on schedule and Ryan Tannehill can play action off of it. But after that, if you take Derrick Henry away, and it's a tall task to do, I understand it. But with Derek Wolfe and Calais Campbell, those additions in free agency, they were got for that specific responsibility to stop Derrick Henry. And they did just that, holding this man to 2.3 yards per carry, 22 carries for 51 yards, and he only ran for 2.2 yards per carry. It doesn't make much of a difference. His longest run was 8 yards. He was held, ineffective most of the day. And Tannehill, left a lot to be desired. 18-26 for 165. We need not even talk about that. The thing that was concerning for me was that Lamar Jackson got sacked 5 times, and we were talking about the Tennessee Titans as one of the worst third down defenses and one of the worst pass rushes in the league, and you got sacked 5 times against them. That was a little concerning to me. Obviously, the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to have to get a lead against Buffalo, because if they get into a spot where they get down 10-0, 17-0 to Buffalo, they're going to be in a lot of trouble, because Lamar Jackson, he is not a capable thrower. And from what I saw from him, his pocket mechanics and, his sense of pressure just did not register when he was in the pocket. So that's concerning. But other than that, Lamar Jackson showed what he could do. Ran the ball 16 times for 136 yards. Electric run on a touchdown in the second quarter. Obviously, Hollywood Brown looked impressive. 109 yards on 7 receptions, got him involved, and they have to keep him involved because he's the deep threat. Mark Andrews, we already know what he can do over the middle, so that's going to be, an area of concern for the Buffalo Bills. And this is going to be an interesting matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. You talk about Marlon Humphrey and him potentially matching up with Stephon Diggs. You talk about Marcus Peters matching up against potentially Cole Beasley or Gabriel Davis on the outside. You talk about Mark Andrews and how he's going to match up potentially against Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano over the middle against the Bills defense. You talk about this pass rush of the Bills and if they're going to be able to get home against Lamar Jackson and stay disciplined in their rush lanes. You also talk about Tre'Davious White and who's he going to match up with, potentially Marquise Hollywood Brown, or they could put him on Mark Andrews. Tre'Davious White's a chess piece on defense as well. So there's a lot of interesting matchups that are going to be had in this game, and I'm looking forward to it, but I expect the Buffalo Bills to win. Moving right along, the Saints-Bears game. Like I said, this game, it was... That's all I could think. This game, I felt like the Saints should have won by more, but they won the playoff game after disappointing the last few years in the playoffs, especially last year with that loss to Kirk Cousins. That was just relatively unacceptable. Just pathetic. But when you talk about this Saints game, Alvin Kamara, what else can we say? This guy, he's a top 3 running back. It's just that simple. Fresh off of getting paid, this guy's something special. He really is. And then Drew Brees, not the greatest day, but looked good, considering, the injury and how the rest of the season played out. So no concerns there. They're playing a familiar opponent in the Bucs, so that's going to be something to look forward to. When you look at this from the Bears' perspective, they just have no offense. It's just relatively pathetic. Their winning streak where their offense looked good down the stretch of the season was obviously against some of the worst passing defenses in the league, bottom 5 passing defenses. And that's what they got fat off of as far as their production on offense. We know Mitchell Trubisky's not the answer. We know Nick Foles is not the answer either. We know their running game is primarily a product of the fact that, or their lack of running game is primarily from the product of they cannot throw the football and they have no competent quarterback, in their backfield or calling the play or, taking the snaps rather. So there's that. Allen Robinson, he's a free agent and they haven't acquiesced to his contract demands when he's been the only, relevant receiver trying to catch uncatchable balls from Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. So the Bears, they have a quarterback situation that they're going to have to get resolved in the offseason, and they're not in prime position to take one of these, upper echelon quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, maybe Trey Lance, but I presume someone will trade up for him and you'll be left with Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, which is, not really much of an answer. I don't believe in either of those guys as long-term quarterbacks. Look more like backups to me. But that's just my opinion, though. I'm no draft expert, but just from watching those two, that's the sense that I get. But that's just my 2 cents. But the Bears, they got a lot to figure out as far as the quarterback position is concerned, because their defense is elite, but an elite defense can only hold up for so long in, this offensive pass-happy NFL. And the Bears defense just got, and they only gave up 21 points, which is not that bad. But, it is what it is. That's what they wrote for their season. Now we get to this. Now we have arrived at the portion of the show where I'm going to lose my mind. And I said this, I continued to say it, and eventually I was proven right. I didn't want to be proven right, but, when I put on my analyst hat, these are the things that, I have to do. When I take, the emotion and, my fandom out of it, I put on my analyst hat. I said the Pittsburgh Steelers were not going to win a playoff game. I said they'd be one and done. I jumped off the wagon 4 weeks ago and I said it. You can go back and watch, the episodes to prove that I said it. But this Pittsburgh Steelers team lost to the Cleveland Browns 48-37, went down 28-0 in the first quarter. First play of the game, Marquise Pouncey snaps the ball over Ben Roethlisberger's head. Then you talk about the following play. Ben Roethlisberger tries to throw a pass to Benny Snell, is intercepted. Then you talk about he overthrows Juju Smith-Schuster or Deontay Johnson, whoever it was. They get their hands on it, but it's too high. Another pick. And then you talk about another interception where you're driving the ball, and you throw another pick because your pass gets batted in the air. And this is the funny thing. When people talk about the size of quarterbacks and can they see behind the line, it's funny because a 6'5" quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger had the most passes batted down this year. Now, we're going to get to all of that in a second. But, this game, it was just a disgrace. The Steelers, they should be ashamed of themselves in so many different ways. But this just... It just really appalls me. It really just does. I'm sorry. And I can't escape it. That's the thing. It really appalls me and I cannot escape this reality. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-6 in the decade in playoff games. This is supposed to be one of the best franchises in the NFL. One of the most revered and renowned franchises in the NFL. And has one of the premier head coaches in the league who people say is a top 5 head coach. Now, I'm sorry. And I want to make this very clear right now. I am not advocating that Mike Tomlin be fired. Although there was an argument in 2017 that he should have been fired. And I stand by that. But I forgave it last year and said I'm glad he stayed on board as the head coach. But I'm not going to retract my statements from earlier 3-4 years ago when I said he deserved to be fired because he did. I'm sorry. I still feel that way. But I'm glad he's the head coach. I am. It's talking about both sides of your mouth, but guess what? I'm a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I can do it. Needless to say, Mike Tomlin is overrated as a head coach. And that's due to numerous factors, not all of them on him. This record is primarily his responsibility, but there's some other things I'm going to get into in detail. But first I have to do this game. So, we're just gonna when you were down 7-0, your offensive coordinator, Randy Fichtner, who I've gotten on a lot this whole season for his predictable game plans, his lack of scheming for the running game, his inability and no creativity or innovativeness as far as the passing game, his lack of adjustments, which leads to the batted passes at the line of scrimmage or the tip balls that are in the air because your short passing game has been caught up to and you never made adjustments. So that we have all that going for you. But the Randy Fichtner decided, Browns missing their number 1 and number 2 corners. You know what we're going to do, guys? We're going to run the football down their throats when our best way to win is to pass the ball with Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, James Washington. That makes no sense when the team's missing 2 of their starting corners. We're talking about that. They're missing Olivier Vernon, a premier pass, like one of their best pass rushers. So we're talking about all these factors that affect the passing game, and you come out and decide you want to run the ball, something that you haven't been good at the entire season. You're the worst running team in the league, and now all of a sudden you're trying to establish the run with James Conner. What are you thinking? And then this is the really part about Randy Fichtner. So he gets a fullback dive to work on a certain series early in the game. Then the Steelers arrive at a 3rd and 1. They motion like they do. They motion the exact same way they did when they converted a previous 3rd and 1 with the fullback dive that they ultimately converted with. They do the same exact motion sequence, and they run another fullback dive like the Browns didn't see that the previous possession or on the same series. And of course, the Steelers get stuffed. And the pitch was wide open. Now, a smart play. So no, let's go back. A dumb play caller does that. A smart play caller fakes the fullback dive, pitches it to the running back, which was open on that play, and gets the first down. But Randy Fichtner has no foresight. He has no vision. He has no creativity, no innovativeness, no adjustments. And so you're left with these mind-boggling play calls that look even dumber by the day. And so you sit there and you watch it, and it's just like, oh my gosh, the game's just teetering away. And then you get to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers being down 28-0. And this guy punts the ball inside of Cleveland Browns territory at like the 39-yard line, I believe. Dude, like, what are you doing? What are you playing not to lose? You're down 28-0. These are type of coaching decisions that Mike Tomlin, it really just baffles me that people call him a top 5 head coach. And if you're a top 5 head coach and you're in the playoffs and you're a Super Bowl winning head coach, where is the experience? Where is all that intelligence when the game is going on? It seems to be, it's nowhere to be found. And so we get to that. Then we get to another point in the game because the Steelers are coming back where they're down 12. Because at one point you were chasing points trying to convert 2-point conversion after 2-point conversion. So that was, you left some points on the board, but I understand. But you get to a point in the game where you have the momentum. The Cleveland Browns, you stopped them twice. You've gone back into the game. You're down 12. And you have the Cleveland Browns right where you want them. It's 4th and 1. And I want to bring up something because there was an article written about all these great Tomlinisms and all these great things. Because Mike Tomlin, he sounds great in the post-game pressers. He really does. I'll give him credit for it. But on the field, he does the exact opposite of what he says. What do you mean, AC? Let me bring up a quote. A famous Mike Tomlin quote. He says, "We don't live in our fears." But he ends up punting the ball when you're down by 12 and you have the Cleveland Browns scrambling on offense and on defense. He punts it instead of going for a 4th and 1. And now let's bring up another quote. If you can't get a yard, he said this after the Washington game when the Steelers couldn't convert on 6 tries against the Washington football team to get a yard to get a touchdown. He said, quote, "If you can't get a yard, you don't deserve to win." Yet you punted down 12 in the fourth quarter of the playoff game on 4th and 1 with 12 minutes to go. What are you talking about? We don't live in our fears. What are you talking about? You lived in your fears right then. You were scared to go for it because if you didn't, you felt like the game was over and the Cleveland Browns were going to score, which they did anyways. And when you punted, after you punted rather, and you didn't get a yard, you weren't willing to go to get the yard. So, you didn't deserve to win. Right then and there, you didn't deserve to win because you were scared to go for it. I'm sorry. But people want to continue because they're like, oh, well, Mike Tomlin's not out there throwing interceptions. He's not out there snapping the ball over guys' heads. It's his in-game decisions. It's these in-game decisions. And the other part of it, because the Steelers ultimately lost this game, so I'm not going to continue getting into the rest of the game because the game was over after that. I'm sorry, it just was. But when you talk about Mike Tomlin and this 3-6 playoff record in the last decade, let's bring into question your playoff resume since their Super Bowl that you won with Bill Cowher's players and his elite defense and quarterback that he drafted before you got there. No offense. He coached them there, so he gets credit. But I'm just saying, well, let's bring this all the way into question. Since 2010 until 2019, 2020 season, you did not have a good defense. It took you too long to build a defense, number one. Number two, your playoff resume. You beat Matt Moore, you beat AJ McCarron, and you beat Alex Smith because you made 6 field goals. But let's bring up your 5 playoff losses. You lost to Tim Tebow, a guy who cannot throw. What? You lost to Peyton Manning on a bum arm. You lost to Joe Flacco, and then your two most recent playoff losses. You gave up 45 points to Blake Bortles in Pittsburgh, and then you gave up 48 to Baker Mayfield on a week where the Browns only practiced one time and they were out without their head coach, and the special teams coordinator is the head coach. Why is this team always getting into the playoffs and they're unprepared and unready to play? This is flat out unacceptable if you're the head coach. And this is what I mean when he's overrated. Who have you beaten? What competent teams have you beaten in the playoffs? Alex Smith is the best team out of is the best quarterback you've beaten out of the 3 teams that I've named that you beat. You beat Alex Smith and you didn't even score a touchdown. You kicked 6 field goals. You beat Matt Moore. He was a backup quarterback because Ryan Tannehill was hurt. And you beat AJ McCarron because Andy Dalton was hurt. Give me a break. You lost to Tim Tebow. You lost to Peyton Manning on a bum arm. You lost to Brady and you got blown out. You've frequently gotten out coached by Bill Belichick year after year after year after year after year. And then you lose to Blake Bortles giving up 45, and you lose to Baker Mayfield in his first playoff game without his head coach, and the special teams guy is calling the plays, is the head coach, and they only practice one time the whole week, and they come into your stadium and stomp you? This is flagrantly unacceptable. So that's the part where Mike Tomlin has to be held accountable. But here's the other part where he has to be held accountable as well, because it's one of two things. Because this staff, the other part I said, when Toby was on this podcast and I called Mike Tomlin an average head coach, what I meant at the time was this. He's not average because he's average. He's average because the people he's surrounded with are average. Randy Fichtner is not a good offensive coordinator. The Steelers didn't score any points in the first quarter against the Browns. So he should be gone. And they went a stretch of like 6 of 7 games where they couldn't score in the first quarter. So A, you're unprepared, and B, your offensive game plan sucks going into the week, and C, you don't adjust. So there's all 3 of those things. So you need to be gone immediately. And then we talk about Keith Butler, because some people are like, oh, I know some people say this. AC, he had a top 5 defense. He has a top 3 defense. Look at all the categories. He was ranked top 3. And hold on a minute. Let's pump the brakes on Keith Butler, man. Because he really annoys me with these schemes and these little things that he does, putting linebackers on receivers when there's only one receiver out there. Robert Spillane ends up on Jarvis Landry. And then let me not get into your other schematic errors where you put linebackers on receivers against the Patriots, and then you put linebackers on receivers like 2 or 3 years ago in the Chargers game that you lost to Phillip Rivers. You put John Bostic on Keenan Allen and LJ Ford on Keenan Allen on multiple occasions because because of your lack of adjustments. That's the thing that I've been getting on Mike Tomlin about, and that's my problem. He's a great motivator, all those things, although that's coming into question because this team is not ready to play when it comes to playoff games. But you're talking about these schematics as far as the defense is concerned, it's just appalling. The Browns are a team that plays a lot of 12 personnel and 13 personnel, one running back, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, 3 tight ends, 1 receiver in both of those formations. So naturally, you should get your corner, who is the guy that you pay to cover the receivers, on the receiver, instead of getting your linebacker and putting him in a position to fail on the receiver. At that point, that's a coaching error. I can't get on Robert Spillane for not being able to cover Jarvis Landry, who's one of the best receivers in the league. That's a coaching error, and that falls on the coach. And Mike Tomlin is a defensive mind. He came from a defensive background, defensive backs coach, defensive coordinator with Tony Dungy. Like, come on. Like, this is unacceptable. And the other part of this is it took him a decade to to get an elite defense. Your defenses were trash. They were trash for numerous years until you got Minkah Fitzpatrick. Everyone who is on the defensive side of the ball, who's a coach, owes their paychecks to Minka Fitzpatrick because he saved this defense, because this defense was not good before he came. I'm sorry. And people keep saying, oh, well, this defense doesn't work without elite safety play. Well, if you knew that, why were you not investing more money in the safeties or trying to get an elite safety? Why were you not doing that? These things are just mind-boggling to me. I'm sorry. These dudes, they're not qualified. Randy Fichtner, no, I'm not calling race into question what I'm about to say, but Randy Fichtner and Keith Butler, they're old white guys. And what I mean by that is they're dinosaurs. They don't have any innovative schemes. They're not caught up with the modern times of the NFL. And that's my problem. And either A, Mike Tomlin thinks these guys are good at their jobs and he's keeping them on board, or B, he's just oblivious to the fact that these dudes are not competent at their jobs. They're just not. The Steelers have reached their ceiling with this coaching staff. I'm sorry. They can't get to a Super Bowl with this coaching staff. They can't. It's not a Super Bowl coaching staff. It's not a Super Bowl caliber coaching staff. It's not. Keith Butler, took him having 9 first rounders on the defense, for really 10. It took him having 9 to 10 first rounders on the defense that fielded a competent defense. That's flagrantly unacceptable. I'm sorry. You should not need that many elite players drafted at a first round price to field a competent defense, because the years before he's been a defensive coordinator for a while. He has. And his defenses have never been good. And don't sell me the fact that his defenses have led the league in sacks the last 4 or 5 years. That does not indicate that you're a good defense. That indicates that you can get pressure on the quarterback. But if your secondary is atrocious and you have no adjustments on how to, protect the secondary and keep linebackers off of receivers, then you're not a good defensive coordinator to me. You're average to below average, and I tend to lean towards the latter, that you're below average. There's a lot of defensive coordinators that could do what Keith Butler's doing with his defense. 9 first rounders on it? Come on. People are like, oh, who are the 9 first rounders? You're talking about Bud Dupree's a first rounder, Cameron Hayward's a first rounder, TJ Watt's a first rounder. Tyson Alulu, who's a reserve, is a first rounder. Last year they had Mark Barron and Devin Bush in the inside linebacker positions. They're both first rounders. Joe Hayden's a first rounder. Minka Fitzpatrick's a first rounder. And Terrell Edmonds is a first rounder. You should not need that many first rounders to field a good defense. That's absurd to me. That doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, it does not. No team should need that amount of resources and that amount of talent on the defense to field a good defense. That says something about your coaching. That means your coaching's incompetent because you can't get more out of other players. And I know people are like, oh, the defense gave up 40. The defense gave up 40. The defense is going to be fine for next year. Yes, they had a bad game, but guess what? Any elite defense can get got in this league, and it happened to Pittsburgh. They're an elite defense. They gave up 48 to the Cleveland Browns. But here's my problem. Because there's a report that Mike Tomlin was calling all the defensive plays, and the same report came against Jacksonville when you lost that game. If Mike Tomlin is calling these plays, you should be renounced as the defensive play caller because your play calling sucks. You gave up 45 to Blake Bortles, who's not an NFL caliber quarterback, and you gave up 48 to Baker Mayfield in his first playoff game. This is flagrantly unacceptable. It's flagrantly unacceptable. We have to call this man's coaching seriously into question. I'm sorry. And people keep saying, oh, he's got the second most wins only to Bill Belichick. How can you say he's overrated? Because what was all that winning amounting to? Nothing. I don't expect this team to go to the Super Bowl every year. No, that's not a realistic expectation. But for all this winning he's doing in the regular season, why is he not translating in the postseason? If he's such a great winning coach, why can't he win playoff games? 3-6 in 9 playoff games? That's what you have to show for a decade? This is an overrated franchise right now. This isn't competence. And let's talk about let's talk about your other playoff losses under your resume, on your watch. I'm sorry, but Mike Tomlin's defenses in his tenure In the losses the past decade, you gave up 31 to David Garrard. You gave up 31 to Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. You gave up 29 to Tim Tebow. Give me a break. You gave up 30 to Flacco. You gave up 23 to a washed Peyton Manning. Come on now, bro. No. You gave up 36 to Brady in the AFC Championship game. You gave up 45 to Blake Bortles. And you gave up 48 to Baker Mayfield. Come on now, man. Come on now. Y'all cannot sit up here and say this is stellar coaching. This guy's supposed to be a defensive mind. And he has 9 first rounders on defense. You're giving up 48. This is a joke. No. This is not acceptable coaching. This is not acceptable coaching on any front. I'm sorry. This is going the wrong way. And if they don't make changes at the coordinator positions, Mike Tomlin should be fired. I'm sorry. I'm going to come out and say that right now. Because I can't. This is unacceptable. If you fail to evaluate the lack of competence on your own staff, and you bring these same dudes back who are incompetent, you deserve to be fired as well. Because they're clearly affecting your ability to coach. You do not have any elite assistants on your coaching staff. None of these people and none of these other organizations are calling trying to take your defensive coordinator, despite the fact that your defense was top 3. No one's calling about your offensive coordinator. No one. The only thing that's been taken that was meaningful from your coaching staff was Mike Munchak. And clearly your offensive line has regressed the last 2 years, and your running game has as well. It's probably a factor why you can't run the ball now. But give me a break with everything else. This offensive and defensive coordinator, they need to go, as far as I'm concerned. And if Mike Tomlin can't see that they need to go, then he needs to go as well. Because his resume is flagrantly overrated right now. As far as playoff victories. Sure, he wins in the regular season. That's all fine and dandy. But he's not winning any playoff games. 3-6 is not acceptable when you're a part of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. I'm sorry. It's just not. And so the games that you've lost. Come on now. You give a 45 to Blake Bortles. You give a 48 to Baker Mayfield without his head coach. And off of one practice during the week. And you had all week to prepare for this game. You don't make any adjustment. Like, where is the innovative? Oh, my gosh. It's just mind-boggling that these dudes, they're just incompetent. The incompetence, it just reeks of stupidity. And I'm not saying Mike Tomlin's stupid, but come on, man. You have to see what everyone else is seeing. You're coming up short year after year after year. Like 2007, you blew a fourth quarter lead to David Garrard, one and done. You won the Super Bowl in 2008, but you don't get to use that as a crutch. It's 2021. That was 13 years ago. People are like, oh, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach. That was 13 years ago. He's 3-6 since his last Super Bowl appearance in 2010 in the playoffs. Let's stop all this nonsense and using Super Bowls as a crutch. That was over a decade ago. You don't get to use that as a crutch. Hell, people are criticizing Aaron Rodgers for not getting back to Super Bowls, and he hasn't been the one in a decade either. You think you're above reproach of getting criticized? No. Your resume has come seriously into question, and it has to. Be like, oh, his resume is the second most wins other than Bill Belichick. Well, guess what else is on your resume? You're 8-8 in the playoffs, and you're 3-6 since your Super Bowl appearance in 2010. You didn't even win it. You lost it. Let's go back to reading these other things. You didn't make the playoffs in 2009. In 2010, you got to the Super Bowl, and then you lost to Aaron Rodgers. 2011, you lost to Tim Tebow in the 8-8 Broncos despite being a 7.5-point favorite. 2012, you missed the playoffs. 2013, you missed the playoffs. 2014, you were one and done to the 6th seed Ravens. 2015, you beat A.J. McCarron. You lost to Peyton Manning on a bum arm. 2016, you beat Matt Moore. You kicked 6 field goals to beat Alex Smith. And you got blown out by the New England Patriots. 2017, you gave a 45 to Blake Bortles. 2018, you missed the playoffs. 2019, no, let me go back to 2018. 2018, you lost 4 of your final 6 games and missed the playoffs. You were in playoff contention, and then you lost it. 2019, you missed the playoffs. You lost your 3 final games and missed the playoffs. Although you didn't have Ben Roethlisberger, so I excuse that. And then this year you lost to Baker Mayfield giving up 48 points. And this is a top five head coach? Come on now. If you're a top five head coach, you got to do better than this. Second most wins other than Bill Belichick. And he frequently gets outcoached and outclassed against Bill Belichick. Like, the games aren't even close. You can't be the second most winningest head coach other than Bill Belichick and frequently get outclassed every time by him? Every single time? Come on, like, this is like, come on, man. Come on. You're beating up on a bunch of teams that you're beating up on the Chiefs with 6 field goals and they don't even have a quarterback. And Alex Smith, give me a break. You're beating up on Matt Moore and AJ McCarron. You're beating up on teams that you should beat. Come on, man. In the playoffs, people are like, oh, well, at least you're getting to the playoffs. Well, guess what? In the playoffs, you play quality competition. You don't get to play sorry franchises. The other teams are good as well, which is why the Browns they beat them, were up on them 28-0 because they're a good team. Good teams make you pay in the playoffs. And guess what? Good teams make the playoffs. Especially in the AFC, they had 8 10-win teams. The Dolphins missed the playoffs. And they were a 10-win team. So I don't want to hear these excuses like, oh, well, at least he's getting you to the play. No, that's not a suffice. That doesn't suffice. And if your coaching falls off that much in the playoffs, your coaching is seriously questionable that you're getting outcoached year after year after year. You should not be giving up 45 points to Blake Bortles and 48 to Baker Mayfield. Give me a break. This is unacceptable. No, this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable, and it's not the Pittsburgh Steelers way at all. And then you talk about these lies. If you can't get a yard, you don't deserve to win. And we don't live in our fears. You routinely live in your fears. You live in them all the time. You're scared. Kind of nonsense are you preaching to the locker room talking about we don't live in our fears. You do. You're leading a bunch of scaredy cats. Scared to go for it on 4th down. You're already losing anyways. What harm are you going to do? You're going to lose more than you're already losing? It's a win or go home situation. This isn't win and you have a game next week. It's like, what are you thinking? It's like, what goes into these decisions? And it's like, if you don't have good people around, and that's my problem is if you don't have good assistants around you, you can't even get informed decisions, or you can't even make informed decisions. That's the other reason these guys on the coaching staff have to go. They're not even assisting. They're not doing anything. They're not bringing anything meaningful to the table. Year after year after year, we complain about adjustments and you make none. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable when you're a top 5 head coach. If you're a top 5 head coach, this is unacceptable. And to whom much is given, much is required. And right now, you're not giving us anything except 3-6 in the playoffs and being a bunch of sorry quarterbacks. And then you lose the sorry quarterbacks as well. Baker Mayfield's not sorry, but you're losing to Baker Mayfield and Blake Bortles, giving up 40 plus. That's a team that's unprepared on both sides of the ball. I don't care that the Pittsburgh Steelers put up 42 on Jacksonville that year. They went down 21-0. If you go down 21-0 and 28-0 in your last 2 playoff losses, there's something fundamentally wrong. There is something seriously wrong with your preparation and the people that you have in place coaching this team. Because teams don't just go down in back-to-back playoff losses, 2017 and now this year 2020. Or the 2020-2021 season, they don't just go down 21-0 and 28-0. Those are teams that are unprepared. I'm sorry. There's no defense of Mike Tomlin. Ben Roethlisberger, he didn't have a great game either. 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It was a disgrace. But he's going to be back next year, a $41 million cap hit. Ben Roethlisberger can still throw the football. But he needs a new offensive play caller. That's what it boils down to. Ben, this doesn't excuse Ben. He had a good season, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. But the playoff performance, it was very, very underwhelming and very, very pathetic. It was very disgraceful. His performance was very disgraceful. I'm sorry. So if he's coming back, The Steelers need to get him a new offensive mind because this is flagrantly unacceptable. This offense struggles to score with the weapons that they have on the outside. You're telling me a young offensive mind can't do better with these weapons and a young defensive mind can't get more out of this defense? Do you see what Brandon Staley's doing with the Rams defense? And he doesn't have 9 first-rounders on it. Let me pull this up because this was just very interesting to me. Because the Steelers have 9 first-rounders on their defense. Yet the Rams, starting safety John Johnson, he was a 3rd-round pick. Jordan Fuller was a 6th-round pick. He's a starting safety. Sebastian Joseph, one of their defensive tackles, a 6th-round pick. Troy Reeder, an undrafted free agent. Darius Williams, an undrafted free agent. He's a starting corner. And Troy Hill, undrafted free agent. There are only 2 first-round picks on the defense. Or no, Michael Brockers is a first-round pick. Aaron Donald's a first-round pick. And Jalen Ramsey, who they traded for, is a first-round pick. 3 first-round picks on the defense. No, Leonard Floyd. 4 first-round picks on the defense. Everyone else, the other key contributors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just named 6 other dudes that are key contributors on the defense, and they're a 3rd-round pick, a 6th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, and 3 undrafted free agents. So, and the Rams are the number 1 defense in the NFL. The Steelers are behind them 2nd. So you do not need 9 first-rounders to build a good defense. That's what I mean when I say Keith Butler, he's not a good defensive coordinator. Because you shouldn't need that much talent. That much premium assets invested in one side of the ball to field a competent defense. No, that's unacceptable. No. No. There's other defensive coordinators in this league that could be doing the same, if not much better, with the defense than what Keith Butler is doing. I'm sorry. He's an average to below average defensive coordinator, and my thoughts say he's below average. Because that's what his defense was for a lot of the years he was coordinating until he got Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like I said before, you should not need an elite safety to make your whole entire defense look elite. I'm sorry. That just doesn't make any sense to me. No. So this operation needs to be rebuilt. And I don't care what how Ben Roethlisberger feels. I don't care about any of that. The Steelers need to be trading up for a quarterback. My thoughts personally, they should trade up and get Trey Lance, sit him for a year like the Chiefs did Patrick Mahomes, and let him start in 2022. You got to let Ben Roethlisberger come back, play 2021. He's still got plenty of ability. We've seen it, obviously. He threw for 500 yards. It was empty calorie stats. But Ben Roethlisberger can still throw the football. That's clear. His decision-making was beyond sketchy, and some of the interceptions were not his fault, but it doesn't matter. He had 4 interceptions. I don't care if they were or weren't his fault. It's on his resume. I don't care. If you throw 2, I'm sorry. I don't care if it's your fault or not. You threw 4. So that's inexcusable. But the quarterbacks backing up Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Dobbs, and Mason Rudolph, no, they're not the future answer at quarterback. So the Steelers, I don't care what they do. They need to use their 1st-round pick, mortgage, just trade a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd round. I don't care what it is, but they need to trade up and try to get Trey Lance. That's my idea because, the defense is going to be fine next year, despite the fact that they gave up 48. The offense is the youngest, skills position group in the league as far as wide receivers. So you bring in a young quarterback to, sit for a year, grow with these receivers, let Ben Roethlisberger play out his contract, and then you put that guy in with those young receivers, and he's got plenty of talent. The offensive line will be rebuilt by then. You'll have a running game by then. You pair him with a new play caller that you just bring in, and you're right back to contention. And the defense is still going to be good because TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick will be locked up. Devin Bush will be locked up as well. You have the foundation. It's about whether you execute the game plan. I'm giving the Steelers the recipe to stay in contention. I'm giving them the recipe. Now, whether they follow it is a whole other thing. But they can't extend Ben Roethlisberger. They can't do that. You just got to let him play out the final year of his contract and let him go. It is what it is. I'm sorry. So there's that. But it's going to be a long offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And like I said, I'm not advocating Mike Tomlin be fired, but he's got to blow up this coaching staff. He's got to get rid of all of them. Every last one of them. Because they're making him average and they're not bringing any new, fresh ideas to the table. It's clearly having an effect on him. I'm sorry. To be great, you got to be surrounded by great people. And these coordinators, they're not great. They're not even good. They're average, which is why the Steelers haven't gone very far. They've reached their ceiling with this coaching staff. It's over. You can't get to a Super Bowl with this coaching staff. You can't. You just need to let it go. But that's all I got for now. I appreciate you guys for listening. You're going to want to tune in. Obviously, I know some of you noticed I didn't talk about the Eagles. Like I said, I got to give them their own special episode because so much goes down with them. So you want to hear that? Tune into the episode after this because I'm going to be recording that shortly and it's going to be up with this one shortly. So y'all tune in to that one. That one's going to be even crazier than the last 30 or so minutes of this episode. So, there's a lot to get into, but AC will be here to cover it all and, be where the truth lies because that's all I'm about is the truth. But until then, I appreciate you guys for listening. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, leave questions and comments under the comment section. I will see them. I will read them. I appreciate when you guys ask questions. So please do it. Please, even if you don't know anything about football, ask a question. Just make my day. AC needs to have a few good days here and there. But until then, I appreciate you guys for listening. As always, like, share, subscribe. And until then, I'm out. One love. Peace.